So we've got a really good program lined up tonight. Carol Schlocker put it together. She's famous for putting together all-star female panels, and tonight is no exception.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Carol. How are you?
Hey,
Would you like to introduce yourself, Carol? We're kind of waiting for the initial introductions right now, so welcome.
Sure.
And introduce yourself and why you're attending tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carol Schlocker, and I am a long time AITP program chair and member. Some of you may know me from SOTEC. I'm an IT recruiter.
Hi, I'm Ava Metz-Tolliver. I'm a localization program manager. So localization space, maybe not familiar for a lot of people, but we are basically managing companies' global launches into territories all around the world. Why are you attending tonight? Because I was invited to be a speaker on the panel tonight.
Hi, I'm Christine. I am a technical program manager at Intuit. I'm here to speak on the panel as well.
I guess the next step would be to introduce Carol, and then she can start the event.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I've already introduced myself, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. I'm happy to put this panel together. I think it's really perfect that it's International Women's Week, International Women's Month. So we have an all-female panel in honor of that. And I think we have terrific companies. I mean, companies that we all know and use their products. Fox, Netflix, Honey. I'll just make a little pitch. If anyone out there isn't using Honey when they're online shopping, you should be, and Intuit. And I know all of these women and invited them because I think they have a lot to offer and can, have a lot of experience and stories to back up different things that I think everyone will find very interesting and helpful as they move along in their own careers managing projects. What we're going to do here is I have a series of questions, but we're also going to do some polling so that we can see, like Nilu is our poll coordinator. And as we begin the panel, she'll throw up some questions, and if everyone can answer, so we have a sense of, what type of projects you manage, how big your teams are they onshore, offshore, things like that. That would be terrific. So I see here that we have it till 7:30. I don't know that we'll go quite that long, quite honestly, guys. We'll do the panel and then some Q&A. So save your questions and we'll be happy to get to them. So Nilo, if you want to put out, the first question, what type of projects do you manage? We can gather the information the first question that we wanted to ask that, I think Kate wanted to, Nilo just threw it up on the screen. So anyone who's here, please just answer the question. Take a moment. How the dynamics of leading teams really changed with COVID. It's got to be very, very different. Kate, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yeah, so what I found, pretty much immediately once we went remote and this COVID thing got very serious very quickly, was you really had to lead with empathy. And just sort of recognize and acknowledge that this was an unprecedented time. It was scary. People weren't just focusing on milestones for a project, for technology that probably isn't saving lives. They were thinking about their families, what this pandemic means for everyone. So I think just it really was about like being able to connect with your teams and acknowledge that it's hard, and if people are struggling, that's okay. And an awareness that, not everybody does well when there's a scary pandemic going on, and also not everyone's cut out for remote work. So sort of laying out guidelines that you think would make the team perform best. I know I This wasn't super cool of me, but I really set if everyone can be online around the same hours, not necessarily strict 9 to 5, but it just makes a big difference if we're all reachable at the same time. And then, always be on Slack. I think we weren't always on our Slack previously because we were all in an office, so it wasn't as critical that we be reachable on that mode of communication. But just laying out what my expectations were, and if people struggled, being okay with that, because not everybody's cut out for remote work, and this is temporary, hopefully, and then we can get back to a model where maybe we're more hybrid and people can really put themselves in the environment that they excel at.
No, absolutely. I like the fact that you said empathy. I think that's really, I never thought about it that way, but you're right. I mean, you had people on your teams who got sick, or their family members got sick, and we were all pretty paranoid, for a while, to even do anything. So, yeah. Mernaz, would you want to add anything to that?
Sure. The whole concept of work obviously changed during this pandemic. We went from being in office and seeing each other every day to working in isolation. So that added distress to people, on top of like health issues. They also worried about the relationship they built at work, and we were worried about like the output of our work, right? How our velocity is going to change as a result of not working together in one space. But what we really learned at Honey was like building a strong culture and a healthy culture in the company. It's no longer a luxury, and during this difficult time, that's the proof that once you have a strong culture, it's going to help you through this difficult time to get the team, together. And so we stayed really strong and resilient. Our output of our work not only didn't get worse, it actually in some cases got better.
Yeah.
And, we just learned that the way that we hire people, we look for potential, people that they have skill set and knowledge, but we also look for culture and value fits. So that helps a lot, right? And we are going to just keep doing that, putting our employees' health and mental health, physical health first, and then we can go through this together.
Yeah. Now, so 2 key things, empathy and culture. It's really important. And even when you're adding to the teams, it's just, even interviewing is so different during COVID, because when you interview and someone's in front of you, you can pick up key, cues and so on, but it's a little harder to do that on a Teams or a Zoom call. So I think we've all adapted it in that respect. Not easily, but we have done it. By the way, Nilu, it looks like 60% of our attendees are doing app dev, and 30% are doing infrastructure, and then another 40% are doing other. I'm not certain what the other might be, but just so you know. So if you want to throw up the next question, Nilu, that would be great too, so we can keep them rolling. So Kate or Eva, do you want to add anything to that before we roll on to the next question?
No, I think that was great.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Just thought I'd check. Okay, so when you're managing projects, there's a lot of decision making to be made and so on. I want to just get a quick answer from everyone. How do you ensure that the right people are at the table to make a decision? That's always important to get consensus. So how do you ensure that? Who'd like to start? Be careful, because I'll call on you.
I could start.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Usually, well, at least for the type of work that I do, we typically need somebody to represent from engineering, product, and really just enough people that can make a decision together and get the buy-in from the teams. But it really depends on the type of decision. And it's really important to make sure that stakeholders are kept in the loop of whatever change is made. because things change quickly nowadays. And communication is so important.
Yep. No, absolutely. Would someone like to add to that?
I can add to that. I don't think, there's a formula for that, right? Like, if the right people are at the decision making table. But I think one rule that I have general for meetings that decision needs to be made is that don't make the meeting too big. When you want to go and come back from that meeting with an important decision, especially for the key decisions, if you have too many voices in the room, most of the time you're not successful in that goal. So keep the meeting small, maybe keep it with people that are key stakeholders and people that they can add something, add value or add something to that decision making. And yeah, keep it simple.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Eva, Kate, anything you'd like to add before we move on? I'll
just agree with what Mirnaz was saying, that, don't always seek full consensus on decisions. It's just, that's unrealistic. Sometimes you have to go with the majority, or even just sometimes someone has to make a decision. You have to move forward. Right. So yeah, we'll get to that question later about making the tough decisions. So thank you. So speaking of having the right people at the table and everything, often you're working cross teams, and cross teams have different goals, different initiatives, different, things they need to accomplish. What's the best way to meld all this together and make sure you all meet your goals? Kate, you want to take the lead on this? Yeah, so one of the things that I try to do whenever we are at an impasse where people might have conflicting priorities or conflicting preferences on how to move forward or what initiatives are most important, is to do my best to be objective and take a step back and think big picture for the whole company. If we look at this end to end, not just my, one process area that I see, not just, this one, maybe one area that's making money overall, what's going to reduce costs the most, not what's going to make my budget look best. So just always trying to, if, I was the CEO and I was thinking about the whole company's success, what would I choose? And if I can justify the decision using that logic, then I think it's easier to work with people who might have a different preference or conflicting priority. And then sometimes it's not obvious what's the best thing for the company. You can't predict, oh, if we go this way, we'll save $1 million, and if we go this other way, we're going to save $500,000. Like, it's not always obvious, and you don't always have that data. So there are times where you just have to escalate things to leadership, and they have more context. They might have more insight into things that maybe aren't public yet, things that the company is planning to do, but we wouldn't know about at this point. So I think you have to feel comfortable with just, going to your boss or your boss's boss and saying, like, what do you think?
That's an excellent point, Kate. I mean, just what you just said, there may be discussions in leadership meetings that topics, what plans, goals that you're not aware of, and they may share it with you, but even if they don't, they're going to know about them and help you to get, to the right point. So is there any way you frame it? I'm curious, I'll put you on the spot. Is there any way when you do have to take something to leadership, do you have any discussions or any suggestions on how you frame it? Because you want to be confident that you're walking in there with an important question, but you don't want to show that, gee, I can't do this on my own. There's that balance of, I need your guidance, but I don't want to sound stupid, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do. Some executives, I think, are harder to predict this than others, but I always try to think, like, if someone was asking me this question, like advice on this area, what would be questions or data points that I would want to help me make my decision? Sometimes it's really obvious, and I like to go prepared with that, not the inevitable, oh, I don't know, but I'll follow up on that. So just come really prepared with, you know, we're investigating between, let's say, these two softwares. Here's the pros and cons, here's how much this one costs and that one costs. This one's, you know, maybe a new player in the industry. Just give them as much information as possible so you're not asking them to make a decision blind.
Okay, thank you. So go prepared, have all your data. And do you suggest having a solution or throwing out a couple solutions, or just playing the room and seeing what they come back to you with, and then you can decide whether you want to offer? Is that
I wish I could say I'm always sort of presenting options really fairly, but there are times in my career where I've gone in with a very clear point of view. And so the data that I presented might be a little bit more skewed towards supporting something that I might think is a better option. But I always want to come off as, you know, at least considering, you know, here's why you wouldn't choose this to some extent.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Mernaz, do you want to add anything to that, or Eva or Kate, anything? Eva's shaking her head. I think you have something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, a lot of that sounded familiar to me. I mean, as much as you can tie it to a business case and find allies, I think, in other teams. So, you know, it's never as important to other teams as it is to me or my team from my experience. So as much as I can expand across and find other teams that could also profit from this and can help make the business case with me, that's helpful. In my area, it can be very, very hard to actually quantify and get reliable data on how your proposal, you know, would impact positively. Because in my area, we're talking a lot about like fewer impact and viewership, and that can be really hard to quantify. So that makes it harder, right? I had a case where we had a proprietary tool that really needed to be redone. Everybody, it was highly cross-functional. Everybody agreed we really need a new solution for this, but I couldn't get any traction on it because I really didn't have the data to show it was negatively impacting our core metrics, right? It was just operationally really burdensome, and it's something that instinctively we knew if we had a better solution, we could guarantee a much more consistent experience for our viewers. And then ultimately what it took was a sort of department-wide prioritization exercise where each team was sort of bringing their priorities to the table. And we were actually rating each other's priorities and then saying, like, trying to be as objectively as possible, listening to what other teams presented to us, and we're rating. And so out of this came that it was really such a high priority for so many teams. Then that was the tipping point for leadership to really put their weight behind it and said, yes, this is something we actually do need to prioritize.
Perfect. You hit on some really key things about working with, you know, what I call influencers, the people who may not be exactly at the table, but they're going to have influence on decisions. And really, you know, that's a full-time job that you should be doing all the time anyway, in my opinion, is just knowing who's there, what their, you know, what their goals are, what their initiatives are, what their upfront agenda is, and even trying to figure out what's their hidden agenda, you know? So, and if you can figure that out, and I like what you said about department-wide prioritization meetings. So everyone sees it. It's okay, Eva, don't worry. It's pandemic, you know. You know, I'm surprised it was National Puppy Week this week. I mean, everyone doesn't have their puppy with them, you know, one day this week. But that really, you know, I'm sure if you all do this, oh, I see, and Christine just put a question out to you. I haven't looked at the chat, so I apologize. But that's a good point. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to add anything before we move on to the next question?
I was kind of hoping that Eva would touch on the captain's concept for decision making at Netflix. I think that'd be interesting to a lot of people.
Yeah, please tell us. And by the way, Ninu, if you can throw out the next poll question.
So we have two key concepts at Netflix, which is the concept of an informed captain and farming for dissent. So every major initiative has one informed captain that ultimately is the decision maker. So we are not trying to make decisions by consent, because it would really slow us down a lot. So it's we have informed captains. They're clearly nominated at the beginning of the process, but it is that person's job to really farm for dissent on their proposals, on their suggestions, and to really challenge all of the stakeholders to give their opinion, good or bad, raise their concerns, play devil's advocate, whatever it is, to really facilitate and try to facilitate that dialogue. And yeah, and we call it farming for dissent, and that's incredibly
What do you
useful.
call it? I'm sorry.
Farming for dissent.
Farming for dissent. Okay.
And it is
These
also,
I love these takeaways. This is great. I mean, what do you call it? The captain? What is it? The captain?
it's an informed captain.
And the team elects this person?
Yeah, there's different ways. There's no formal process. It could be because it is that person's initial idea and proposal, and they see it all the way through. It might be from leadership, somebody appointed to run something. It's different ways.
Okay.
Again,
go ahead, finish, and I'll ask you.
Yeah, but again, it's like this person is the ultimate decision maker, but it is also that person's responsibility to make sure they're basing their decision on the best set of data, you know, possible, and they really listened to all of the necessary stakeholders and considered their feedback.
So I'm curious to know, is this considered a prestigious position, or is it considered like, oh my God, I don't want to be that? Or I guess different personalities will react differently. Some personalities will want it, and some personalities will be not me. I mean, can you talk a minute about that for a second?
I don't know. I think from where I come from, everybody wants to be the decision maker,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
I would say yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm looking at the poll, just so you know, 42% of the folks here have less than 10 people on their team. And then another 42% have 20 people on the team. And then 17% have between 10 and 20. So we either have, you know, small groups under 10, or mostly, you know, larger groups over 20. So thank you for sharing that, Eva. That's a real good takeaway. That I'll ask you one last question about that. Is that a standard at Netflix, or do you have to do it? Does every team have to do it, or does the team decide whether they want to do it or not?
It's really organically about, you know, new
Okay.
initiatives. Again, it's not, and it's really about not having to make decisions by consent. But how can you end up with timely decisions that are still based on as much context as possible? And that's the concept.
I'm going to skip around. We're going to get back to talking about teams and projects and all this, but there's an important question that I don't want to run out of time, and I want to discuss it. Today, obviously, a big topic for everyone and every company is diversity and equity and inclusion. And I wanted to hear from all the panelists, how is that happening at your companies? And really, more importantly, how are you ensuring that day to day it really happens, not just in human resources who says, puts out a statement or something. So who would like to go first? Because I'd like to hear from everyone. Because you guys have some big brand name companies that it's important.
Hey, Carol, I could go. Am I muted?
Okay, thank you, Christine.
Yeah, at Intuit, it's embedded in onboarding. So I've been with Intuit a couple of weeks now, and you can really see that it's something important and really valued there. You have the option to join the resource groups as a member or as an ally, and people are really encouraged to participate. And as far as how I try to make it happen day to day, when I was at Open Table, I was actually one of the co-leads on our women's employee resource group. And I would run workshops to encourage people to realize their own self-promotion and to become more comfortable talking about their strengths and their achievements so that they can help uplift each other. So really, it's a matter of creating these supportive groups where people feel safe, that they can support each other and continue to go from there.
Okay. I'll put you on the spot, Christine. Did you find it much different between Open Table and your new position at Intuit?
As far as diversity?
Yeah, well, just as far as how they really implemented it day to day and made it part of the culture. Like you just said, at Intuit, it's obvious at onboarding that this is just who we are.
It's way more evolved at Intuit in the sense that it's already part of the workflow when you're onboarded. At Open Table, it was more grassroots, and we've put a lot of things in place. In the past year, they hired someone to actually work on diversity. So I've seen it evolve. It's nice.
It's interesting. I'll share a little tidbit that I won't say the company name, but talking about really, promoting it and really living it. I'm on the board of STEM Advantage, and yesterday we won a big award at the LA Business Journal for the Nonprofit of the Year. And the award that was given to a company that for diversity and equity is a company that a year and a half, 2 years ago was all over the front page of the LA Times because they were being sued for having such a hostile work environment and women were uncomfortable and all that. And I don't know if they really turned it around, but I found it fascinating that they won this award when 2 years ago they were headliners, for not such good stuff. So you really wonder, how do you live it day to day as opposed to just having HR making these statements, and so on. So, okay, Mernaz, do you want to tell how that works? They give discounts to everyone at Honey or what?
We don't get special discounts, but there are other things that are happening at Honey that it's separate from HR and things that everyone says. And they want, everyone has good intention, I want to think, but when people talk about diversity, it's not only about numbers. They say diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice. Inclusion is actually where your intention, the actions really matter, right? So at Honey/PayPal, I think PayPal equally is doing a great job. There are different ways. As you know, this is not an issue that you can tackle it from one angle. There are just multiple things that you need to think of. For example, for hiring, you need to think of your job description. We do that. We had training workshops about how your job posting should be worded in a way that it doesn't attract only men, because as we know, engineering is a male-dominated industry.
Right.
As soon as you post a job, you're going to get plenty of male engineers, as you don't get as much from women engineers. So there are a ton of that we do about job posting, about job boards, that we are doing it to make sure that we get it in front of a diverse group. And it's only not about women, of course, it's about diverse talents, right?
Right.
And the other things, but I think in my day-to-day that is separate from all, recruiting and so, is that I'm actually very proud that we kicked off our mentorship program at Honey for women of engineering last October. My intention of running that program was getting our engineers, women engineers, in front of mentors, which they were mostly executive and leadership. I want them to be mentored one by one by them. I wanted to have that because, as you know, mentorship is about learning, but it's a lot about building relationship. It's about networking. And as you know, they say it's about not what you know, is who you know. So we did a lot in a very short period of time in a mentorship space. And it was so successful that now we are expanding it to everybody. And we are kicking it off next month, as a matter of fact. And on the PayPal end, there are a lot of programs like Shadow Program that people can sign up. It's kind of like a mentorship, but you're actually in day-to-day shadowing with VP and above to learn. So I think that just learning, on the learning part and growth, we are doing a lot to make sure that we have not only diversity, like getting diverse group in the company, but also inclusion, which is making sure we sponsor these people.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you. You wonder if one day we'll get to the point where even during interviews, they interview, when you audition for an orchestra, no one sees who you are. You're behind a curtain. So they don't know what you look like, what background you're from. Maybe one day, we should get to that for interviews. But Kate, you want to tell us a little bit about Fox and day-to-day and what they're doing?
Yeah, so I'm not as in the loop on sort of like our formal changes or trainings that are coming out, but I've heard that, they're planning more formal things at a company-wide perspective. But I can just say what I've witnessed sort of uptick over the last year or so is a real visibility of leadership supporting certain diversity initiatives, whether it's a group or hosting a panel on certain topics. It doesn't seem, Christine mentioned sort of like grassroots, it seems less grassroots now. It seems like people from the top really care, and they're going out of their way to make it known that this is important for our company.
Right. Okay. Eva, you want to tell us a little bit about Netflix?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really nice to hear, Kate, that it is, that leadership is from the top is in now, because that's really what it takes, right? Yeah, I mean, inclusion is a true value at Netflix. It's something that it has become one of our official values 2 years ago, and the company has been really working to make greater strides in diversity and inclusion. It starts with hiring a larger number of diverse talent, and so I know that recruiting teams are very focused on how can they, widen the pipeline. How can they step away from just the standard things of looking at candidates? It's similar to what Manar said about job description, but it goes wider, right? How can you avoid looking at the same type of candidate from the same universities or whatnot all over again? The pipe, there's no pipeline problem. It's about how hard you look and where you look. So that's one. And then, of course, similar to what was said before, it's really about inclusion. So, all of those efforts are not worth anything if you are not creating an environment that is truly inclusive of different people's perspectives, and make them feel at home and create an environment that is supportive of everyone. And so I'd say particularly over the last year and a half, there have been a lot of efforts to really increase employees' opportunities to, talk and uncover their biases, their unconscious bias, their blind spots, whatever they might be, and then also really give employees tool sets and tools to start talking about some of these things, right? There's a lot of things that go on in this world nowadays, have always gone on, right? And we bring this to the workplace. All of us bring it to the workplace. So how can we acknowledge that? How can we acknowledge that, you know, our Asian American employees have had a really hard week? And what does that mean? How does that show up? And how can we support them? And how can we, you know, build our collective IQ around some of these things and help support each other? So there's a lot going on in a lot of different areas. Of course, we also have the ERGs and all of that.
Thank you. I think we got everyone. Thank you. Thank you. It's just an important topic to hear for today. So let's get back now to official project management. I'd like to talk about tough personalities and saboteurs, people who, you know, you never can please and so on. And I just like to talk about how do you manage, be they a saboteur or a dominant personality who wants to really just be the smartest person in the room, or even someone who doesn't contribute. I mean, it could be the opposite end of that. So Eva, you look like you're ready to go with this one. So go ahead.
You know, it's all about engagement. From my experience, they need to be heard, right? So I'm a big fan of just one-on-ones with people. I try, it takes time on my end, but it's so valuable because I can really get to listen what their concerns are. I can talk issues through with them. If it doesn't need to bleed into a meeting. If I have a stakeholder who's really difficult and likes to interrupt, you know, it gives me an opportunity to say, let's just take this offline. We'll discuss it on the side. So yeah, that has really worked for me. And you know, if it's really disruptive, and you know, we have to point it out at one point, right? We have a open feedback culture that makes that maybe easier than in some other places. But it's really helpful to point to somebody out that their behavior is really not helpful to move a project forward. And as long as it's coming from a place of showing them how it negatively impacts a project,
Okay.
it's you know, it works for me anyway.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Kate, or Eva, I think we talked about you wanted to add something on these types of personalities. I mean, you're always going to have them.
Yeah. So I think I have a couple different strategies depending on what flavor of saboteur it is. But if it's for a larger decision, and I think there's going to be like a particular person that will not be in agreement, I will do similar to what Ava was saying, but I will go around and get everybody else's sort of backing before I bring it to either that particular saboteur or the group overall. And so in that sense, I've already built a coalition of people who have said they support it. And so then that one person to go against it really has to be able to justify why they're going against something that so many other people have said that they support. And then if they're silent saboteurs, the ones that maybe covertly will try to sabotage, they're not going to be vocal in meetings. I just try to keep them in the loop as much as possible. I never want them to be able to really sort of claim ignorance. Oh, I didn't know that
Right.
you were doing. So just making sure I sort of keep them in the loop so they can't say they didn't know something was going on. And then what Ava was saying about someone being particularly disruptive, I will just cut them out if I feel like they're a cancer to the initiative. So, you know, if I can talk to their boss and correct the attitude or approach, I'll try that. But if it doesn't work, then there comes a point where you don't necessarily need to have that person in the room.
It's interesting. I find too that teams or even just workplace, when you finally do cut that person out, because it's obvious to everyone, you know,
Yeah.
who that person is, they're often relieved. It's really a detriment to the team or the project when people like that are allowed to, you know, just stay on and be the way they are and no corrective action is taken. It's demoralizing for the folks who are doing their jobs properly and so
Yeah.
on. So
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Christine, do you have anything you'd like to add here?
I think similar to what Ava said about just kind of parking lotting things and also refocusing the team on what the decision at hand is. If somebody's got a really loud voice and is just taking away everybody on a tangent. But one thing I wanted to add to is a lot of times there are also decision makers who are just silent and need to be given space to have their voices heard. And on some of the Zoom or Google Meets that we do nowadays, there are options to like raise your hand if maybe you're a little more introverted and not willing to just voice it out over this more dominant personality. So that's a tool that you can encourage your teams to use. Or you could give them that space at, you know, towards the end, just like, hey, so-and-so, do you also have any thoughts on this? Because they probably do have some good ideas and are just waiting for that opportunity to share it.
Yeah, that's a very good point to actually try to include everybody, right? And giving them the opportunity. 15 seconds of silence can be very uncomfortable, but it's a concept that we are trying. So deliberately saying, does anybody want to add something or has question, and then waiting for 15 seconds, which seems like an eternity, but more often than not, somebody will jump in at question 10 seconds and say, oh yeah, actually I do want to say something.
So is that an official technique that is encouraged to be used, that just, you know, see who pops up? Okay.
Yeah, it's really also, you know, intercultural communication, or if you're working with a lot of different teams that might be, you know, located in other places around the world where maybe communication is not, you know, works differently, that works really well, because there's cultures where maybe a direct jumping in is just not appropriate, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you. It's between culture, different cultures, it's considered very rude or whatever. And then just different personalities don't have the, they don't want to, they're afraid. So and I have found often people like that, they've been listening and they've been percolating. And when they finally get to talk, they have some really good ideas. They're just not the ones who, you know, want to be the dominant ones at a meeting. So, okay, let's talk about stakeholder resistance. It's obviously a key thing that you're going to encounter. Eva, do you want to start out and tell us some Netflix stories?
I think stakeholder resistance. I think I covered a lot of it already.
Okay.
Maybe somebody
Anyone
wants
else?
to take a step.
Manaz, Christine, Kate, anything about stakeholder resistance? Okay. All right. By the way, we didn't do, I'm just curious. We didn't do, if you're doing offshore, the poll question about offshore teams and so on. So while we throw that up, we're getting close to, you know, the end. I'd like to open it up unless there's some, we talked about some things about, you know, discussing unpopular decisions and tough questions and so on. I'd like to open it up to anyone else who has questions to ask, you know, the participants, the audience. Anyone have any questions you'd like to throw out to the panel? come on, guys, there has to be someone, or should I give you the Eva 15 seconds of silence?
This is Roger. I thought that the person who talked about mentoring was making some real good points. And in my career, I found that when companies or even departments have some kind of formal expectation that people find a mentor and work with a mentor on a regular basis, it's extremely useful. And I'm not talking about having a mentor that's a senior person in the company, so that I would personally get opportunities to move up. It's just a matter of personal growth. And I think that having some kind of formal mentor program gets people out of their normal frame of mind, and it causes them to grow, whether they like it or not. And I think it's very positive. That's my comment, and whatever other people want to say.
It's Mike Sharika. I'm going to jump in too and piggyback off of what you just said, Roger, because I commented as well on the mentorship program. I think that's awesome. I think it was, oh gosh, how do you say your name? Mernaz, okay, that talked about it. But I wanted to know, the way you all have set up your mentorship program, is that a separate role? Like, is someone actually getting paid a salary to do the mentoring, or have you all absorbed additional responsibilities and you're like up later nights? And because it's a lot of work and commitment to actually support mentees rather.
Yeah, you're right. It's a lot of work. No, we didn't create any separate role. In fact, the whole point of it was to get the engineers, women engineers in this case. It was a pilot program. I started small. I admitted that I never ran a mentorship program ever before. So it was new to me too, but I was so just passionate about doing it because, well, I was a junior engineer. I wanted someone to do it for me. So I wanted to just pay forward. And we didn't create that role for anybody, but rather we wanted to have executives and this engineering at different levels to get into one-on-one. Like, for example, a junior engineer probably wouldn't get chance to book in, time from a CTO, right? Now that CTO, well, what I did was like a lot of talking with higher ups and convince them to volunteer their time. And by doing that, I just, it just encouraged them. I didn't do much, but they volunteered their time. They did the majority of it. But it was just like getting the buy-in from everybody that, they can do this. And then also setting the right expectation, right? So I set the expectation kind of low. Like I said, once per month, at least 1 hour, 2 hours per month, meet with your mentee. And then I had office hours that I would get feedback from mentees group and mentors group, and I would exchange ideas and I say how to run those mentorship sessions in a more effective manner. I spent a lot of my weekend hours on that, and everyone who did volunteer did the same thing. But ultimately, everyone was so satisfied. Even mentors, they were so fulfilled by the fact that they volunteered and they were part of that growth.
Yeah. No, mentorships, mentees, it's an invaluable program. I'm curious, Mernaz, when you went to some of the more senior people in the company, were they open to being mentors and being, partaking in the program you were setting up?
Yes, beside the fact that everyone at Honey, one of our core value is level up, and leveling up and growth mindset is one of the things that at the core of our questions when we interview people. Mm-hmm. So that was a core value. We wanted to kind of be a role model for being, if you are at the leadership level, you're not role modeling your own core value, that's not good, right? So they did that because they really believed in it. The second thing was like, I told everyone at the director level and above, you don't get chance to know other people in other teams. This is your chance to get to know other people in the engineering group, which is the value that they saw on top of the growth that, oh, I talked to this engineer. I had no idea this is a pain point. I had no idea this is the perspective, because now their perspective is wider. It's good for them too, right?
Right. No, No, I agree. I've seen what mentorship programs can do through STEM Advantage and just even in my own career. And sometimes someone's a mentor, sometimes, often it is an official program like you're talking about, Mernaz, but many of us who, have had mentors who weren't official mentors, but, you watch and they see you grow and they guide you in certain ways and admonish you in certain ways when you've done something like, no, you shouldn't do that. And they, I've had people like that, both men and women. A mentor does not have to be for women, a woman, and for guys. I mean, it certainly is helpful to young people, especially, everyone's heard the phrase, if you can see it, you can be it. So when you're young, if you see a woman of your background, as an engineer, a woman of color or whatever, a Latino man or whatever, yes, it shows you the way. But it doesn't have to be. I had many mentors who weren't official mentors, but guided me. And then also, quite honestly, we all know this too, that you can have people who you go, oh, you see them do something at a meeting or act a certain way at a party or a work function, and you go, oh, that's, I'm never doing that. I'm never saying that. So anyone else want to share about mentors or mentorship programs at their companies?
Oh, sorry. I was just really quickly going to add one thing that Fox Women in Technology has rolled out, which I think is a really kind of unique spin on mentorship, is basically knowledge circles. So it's a senior executive or leader within technology that will meet with a specific sort of group of women regularly. And I think it's cool because I think we get a lot of bang for our buck there, because it's not one-on-one. So you're hitting more people with a smaller number of leadership, and like you were saying, sort of interacting with people from other teams. So we're getting both that sort of cross-department group discussion, as well as a lot of people are getting to work with a senior executive person.
No, it gives the executives exposure to other people in the company and be able to see what talent is really out there. And gee, I'd like to get them involved in this or that. And it's good for everyone.
And you'd be surprised, my boss has come back and learned things about projects that are going on that he would have never known about because his mentee told him, and it's like something that now that we're aware of it.
Yeah.
No, and it doesn't take that much time. I know at STEM Advantage, we say 1 hour, once a month for 1 year. That's not really a lot of time. Hopefully it'll evolve into a little more than 1 hour, because, it's tough to do something just in 1 hour, most times it does. So.
Hi, Carol. It's my question. I see that Vivek had a question, and I thought it was a really good one. So I didn't know if you're checking the chat.
I did a little bit ago, but I didn't see it. So yes, please. Vivek, why don't you tell us your question? Yes.
I'm not sure if he can unmute or not.
Here's the thing. We've talked to a lot of people, and we've heard from a lot of people how productivity is going up because everybody's at home. They don't have to commute. They don't have to do this. It's natural to focus on the positives. And yeah, we kind of know there's some definite negatives out there. And I want to know, what have you seen in terms of limitations with the work at home thing, even though IT is very well suited for work at home with distributed, teams, specialty from here, from there, you kind of put everybody together. But what about basic things like when you're talking mentorship, what about young people who walk in? Are they learning as much as, maybe they would at the office, or maybe they're learning less, but, what are they missing out on? What other areas of weakness do you see? Like planning is tough, or brainstorming is hard when you're doing it online. Have you seen that, maybe everything is going well that you've already planned out, but you don't see the new stuff in the pipeline, or the new stuff is a lot harder to discuss? I just wanted to kind of have a discussion on that, on the negative sides of that.
Good question.
Yeah, I will say I have heard the stats that productivity has gone up, but it might just be the environment I'm in right now with our really sort of intense pressure for the last 2 years on this separation from Disney. But I feel like burnout is up as well. Like almost we are being more productive and we're working probably more focused for longer hours of the day, but there is just something about sitting in the same room every day and staring at your screen that I just feel like it's going to catch up to us. So I'm looking forward, even if we lose a little bit of productivity, dare I say, but I'm looking forward to us getting into a different, not 100% remote environment, because I do think it's taking a toll on people.
I completely agree with you, Kate. I mean, I'm fortunate. I'm in a house. So like I start my morning out upstairs at my desk, and then at a certain time I move down to my kitchen table, make my tea and all that. But sometimes by Wednesday, I'm like, and I'm very fortunate because my husband actually goes to work every day. So I'm in the house alone. But there are days where like I literally during the week have planned like, okay, on Wednesday, I'll go to Target. Okay. And on Thursday, I have that break. Maybe I'll go out for a walk for 45 minutes. But I literally plan errands just to like get out of the house. You know?
Yeah.
And I agree, it's a toll.
If you're not good at planning those types of things, it'll be, you know, days that I don't leave the house. And I think that like mentally, it's just sort of wearing on me that, yeah, I've gone from like my office to like sleep like too many nights in a row.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I even will admit, and I don't know if anyone else will admit this, but in the beginning of the pandemic, I used to have to think like, did I take a shower today? I mean, like, the days just blended in.
I know. People are not taking vacations anymore because they're not going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. If you try and go up or down the coast, hotels are pretty booked because all of us Californians, we can go up to Santa Barbara, or, you know, or wherever you want to drive. I mean, we actually drove to Arizona just to get over to Sedona for a couple of days. But yeah, I agree with you completely, Kate. I really, and now that it's opening up and I can meet someone for lunch or, you know, take a walk now that it's daylight savings time. And at 6 o'clock, I can still go out for a walk where 2 weeks ago, it was still dark, you know? So I do think it's having a long-term effect. You know, and we're the lucky ones. I will add, we are the lucky ones. We have jobs that we can do at home, well-paying jobs, professional jobs. I mean, and most of us have, you know, good living accommodations. So, yeah, just imagine. Other questions? Anyone else?
Going back to actually brainstorming, so I know like productivity has improved and we all are working like extra hours, right? How about like brainstorming sessions? I know like it's before it was like so easy. You are all in a conference room, right? You have a whiteboard, you just draw, you erase, and everyone like uses different markers, and then we take a picture and say this is what we want to do. I think that's like getting a little challenging now, right? Because we're trying to be all remote and it's just so hard to draw anything on a Zoom session.
Right.
Any tips and tricks or anything that has been working?
There are some tools that actually make it pretty easy to do remotely, like Miro or Jamboard. So you really do feel like you're still in the same room, even with Post-its that you can put on there. And I mean, in some ways, yeah, working remotely is different, but I haven't really felt that I'm missing too much from being in the office. The work-life balance is nice in the sense that as long as you set some boundaries for yourself, you're really able to balance a lot more and be more productive generally. But you miss some of those like random walk-ins, or, you know, you're getting a coffee at the kitchen in the office and you see someone who you haven't worked with in a while, but there's actually something you've been meaning to ask them. So I do miss that part for sure.
Yeah.
I think
No,
I want
and
to add something here. The I don't want to all sound all positive. Obviously, a lot of things are different and difficult. But one thing is like I have a team that are I have some teams in LA and I have some in Colorado and Boulder. And the team in Boulder actually are pretty happy with how it's happening today because they were the only one outside the office. Majority they were in the headquarters, and the awareness of having a remote team, just us being, because Honey started as a startup, right? So we just grew and kind of like getting used to that. It was not easy. And nowadays everyone is on, Microsoft Teams. For us, it's Microsoft Teams, and they're much happier. They think it's much more productive for them. The other thing that Christine mentioned earlier was the tool of raise hand. Actually, in brainstorming, sometimes in the room, you probably hear extroverts and people that are louder. They are more voicing their opinion. But I think in the tools that we have in digital world, they help us to actually hear other voices. So use chat, use the raise hand. So that might be actually more inclusive now.
what tools
just on-
in particular are you using, Manaras, that are helpful that way?
I think Zoom has chat feature, right?
Right.
And I think Zoom also has raise hand, but I know that Microsoft
Yes.
Teams that we use has
Yes.
raise hand. So if someone is talking and you just get a lot of opinion and you cannot get the word in, by the way, again, I don't want to make it about gender, but many women tell me that they don't speak up because, well, someone else is always louder than them, or they overthink about their questions or what they want to say too much that the meeting is over, they couldn't get the word in. I think chats feature is one thing that as someone is talking, people are talking, they can just write it down. I mean, write it in the chat. But I mean, in person, that would be awkward. Someone would just go and walk and write something on the whiteboard, right? But the chat is going to help. Raise your hand if you want to get the word in. And yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to
Thank
add
you.
to that. A lot of times you get groupthink too in those brainstorm sessions. And some of these tools have features where you can hide the cards so people fill out what they're thinking and then you reveal it and see if there are common themes or things that you can merge.
Interesting. Repeat that again, Christine. I'm not sure I caught all that. Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Oh, so some of the tools that are available also prevent a lot of groupthink, which is when one person suggests something in a room and everybody's like, they all gravitate to what that person said, when maybe they would have been a little more creative if they had a chance to just put their information on cards and reveal it at a certain time together.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I'll
Thank
post
you.
a name of one of them in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Another thing I'd like to share is that the beauty about these online tools is since it supports the admin and everyone, in fact, can view whose cursors are where. So if you're facilitating, you can actually notice who is contributing, who's not, and which is amazing if you see someone shying away or being distracted, or even if someone is not posted something because it might be different. So the visuals are a lot more in facilitate. I would say the visuals make it a better tool for facilitation besides the collaboration as well.
Good input. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, the tools that are coming out every day. How many people are using Slack? I know Fox uses it quite a bit.
Disney
okay.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Slack is the tool du jour that everyone is using. Other questions? Tony, I'll put you on the spot. You've been really quiet, but I hope you've been getting a lot of good ideas from listening.
No, thanks for the question. I'm, new here, just kind of observing. So thanks for having me. Great conversations around, a lot of relevant topics, for the workplace, project management. So yeah, I'm basically
Is
here.
this your first AITP meeting?
Yes, first one. Christine invited me. I'm
cool. Okay.
glad to be here. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining. You'll get, anyone who registered will get notice of our future meetings and so on.
Okay.
And while we're virtual, they're totally no charge. So invite everyone,
Yeah, thanks, Carol.
Carol,
Sure.
it's my Sharika again. Are we still doing open questioning?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Tony, I'm gonna save you.
As everyone can tell, Ms. Shriek is the person at the meeting who doesn't like to get involved, likes to sort of stay in the background.
That is too lovely. I love it. I actually have one more question for the full panel. We're in this space of, you know, we're onboarding new people, a lot of change in higher ed, period. You see a lot of new positions being opened, new teams being restructured, people leaving, coming in. It's a lot of movement. And so my question is, if you all have any experience and or can speak to both sides, one where we're interviewing new people coming in, and what are some of those things you're looking for as key indicators for them to join your team? And then on the flip side, any information that you have that you can share to people who are trying to onboard and coming to a new team, and they're coming into a virtual team and kind of working from home those first few months potentially.
Good question, Ms. Shrika. Thank you. And you know I meant what I said about you being the quiet person with a lot of love. You know that.
Of course. I love that they're all jumping in to answer too.
So I can kick it off here. So I think, you know, through the pandemic, I've had some failures in terms of like great onboarding with new team members. And then we've gotten better as we've gone along. I think some things that have worked well is assigning a person on your team to really be their buddy for the first couple weeks, and checking in on them sort of proactively. And the other thing is, and this is kind of unfair, but during the times like this where everybody's remote, who's going to excel is that really proactive, sort of not shy candidate that will ask a lot of questions, will Slack people outside of meetings to follow up. And, you know, I've seen both sides of that, you know, the person who sort of waits until we check in with them, and then, you know, a lot of time has gone by and it's just sort of like they're a little bit slower on the learning curve. And then the person who is super proactive and is always pinging, even sometimes calling me in the middle of the day, which I love, is like just picking things up so quickly. So I think if maybe even instruct the people, hey, this might be out of your comfort zone, but you really have to be proactive and reach out regularly so that you get onboarded faster.
Thank you. Anyone else to add to that?
I can add to that. For our onboarding, actually, we are doing, we were doing a good job, I think, but we are doing extra steps for remote hires and people that they don't enter to office to see the office. There is a virtual tour of our office that we added so they can see the office.
Oh, nice.
So that way they feel that they are part of this, and you know, although they cannot experience it. And the other thing is like we are using a lot of like Slack features, a group Slack to kind of, so we have like multiple levels of onboarding. We have a general onboarding and special, depending on their role onboarding. So for engineering, we have few of our senior staff engineers running those onboarding sessions that we actually, what we did additionally is like we are reviewing our materials more often. Once a month at least we review our materials and we get feedback from our new hires, how they feel they were prepared for the first 2-3 weeks of their job. So that way we can adjust, and we are doing it, as I said, is in a more frequent manner than when we were in the office, because you could see them, you could just talk to them, and now they might not know where to go. And Slack group is, if any question comes out of all this onboarding, let's say they go through this onboarding and they still have questions and they're lost somewhere, this Slack group, everyone is gonna watch it if they have anything to say. And there are other things like making them part of the community, like Pet at Honey or Kitchen or Women at Honey. Like there are different channels that we introduce them so we can welcome them and kind of give them the feeling that they're part of this community.
I love the idea of virtual tours. I'm curious, when you do any of you, when you do onboarding, virtual tours is a great one that you can, use that, but that, I was just suggested. But do you have any videos like, I don't know, like if you're joining the engineering group, like if they've interviewed with you, and a video of Mernaz welcoming them to the team, or HR saying, here, we're here if you need anything. Is there anything at all like that any of the companies are doing?
We are actually not in fan of like recorded videos because it's not as personal. We want to actually do live sessions with them. And then I think, Kate, you mentioned about the buddy system. We have that too. Like when I have someone joining my group, I make sure that someone from different team also is connecting with this person, because inside the team, they're going to be part of the stand-up and everything. So ultimately, they're going to meet everybody. But to be connected with the other part of the company, we have that buddy system.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Any other questions or topics or words of advice that anyone would like to offer? Okay, well, if that's it, I will say thank you very, very much.
Carol, it's not my Sharika, it's Tony. I want to know, it's my Sharika.
Okay, okay.
The last little piece, I just wanted to say thank you all for sharing what you did share with the community piece, the buddy system. I actually wrote down some really good tips to take back to my team, so thank you all.
Yeah, that's the purpose of these panels. And for those of you who didn't see, was it last month? Mashrika was one of our speakers and just talked about, what was the title again, Mashrika, of your presentation? I'm blanking out on the official title.
Is that when the task overload, when it's just too much?
Task overload, yes. Oh, it was January. It was January, not February. It was January. You did that to kick off the year. And I'll tell you, I know we can't do it now, but the value of networking is, you can't even count on it. That's how I met Mashrika years ago, met some of the other folks who are here tonight. And you hit it off with certain people, and you just do keep a connection. It's really good. So anyway, thank you to our panelists. We've all had long days, and I know I appreciate, we've done a couple calls and lots of emails and so on to pull it together. I hope it was of value to everyone. I hope everyone who was here will join us for our next AITP meeting, and another one and another one. And panelists, give yourself a hand because you really did a great job. You shared a lot.